Hello, I'm so glad you're here. This is Jenna from McGuire, and today I have a video sharing ideas for personalizing your handmade cards. Now, this doesn't just mean putting somebody's name on it, but really thinking about the recipient as you create your card. Now, I will admit, I had a lot of fun making today's cards. These products are just fun to play with, and I hope you have fun watching it. However, you could do a lot of the ideas that I share here using other products. This is really all about thinking about the recipient as you make a card to make it even more special. And at the end of this video, I will link to another video with more personalization ideas. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. My first few cards have this fun friendship bracelet feel to them. This is the new Concord and Ninth Best Friend Vibes die set and stamp set. You can buy them together or separately. And this is brilliant. Now, even if you don't want to make friendship bracelets, you can create a lot of letters very quickly to add to your cards for personalization, which I'll show later in this video. But I really like how these dies are so well thought out and create such fun friendship bracelets. First, let's create some letters. You can see that this letter stamp is the entire solid thing is connected. So all those letters are connected. So you stamp them all at once, and there's multiple of the more popular letters. So after you've stamped those, and I went and I stamped a bunch, you take the coordinating circle die or square die and line it up. And this will allow you to create circle or square beads, or really just circle or square letters that you can add to any card. So it could work with the friendship bracelet feel or something completely different. I will show both today. So now look, I have all of these letters cut out very quickly. I will put them into little containers and stamp and die cut a bunch of them, so I have them ready for my cards today and future cards. Thanks to the one stamp and one die design, it doesn't take long to do this at all. Let's get started with my first card, which is a very simple one, and it doesn't have a person's name, so it's not personalized in that way, but it's personalized with a message that I know the recipient will like and appreciate, and just what they needed at this moment. So think about the recipient. If maybe there's an expression they say often or an expression that you think they could really relate to, that's fun to put on a card. So let's go ahead and start by creating the string that our beads will go on. I have black cardstock from Concord and Ninth, and I'm putting Altenew double-sided adhesive sheet on the back of it before I die cut it with this thin die. The reason I put the adhesive on the back is now it's very easy to add onto our card panel. You just place it where you want it and then press it down with a bone folder to really secure it. So I really turned my cardstock into a sticker, which makes it so much easier to adhere those thin little pieces. And by the way, before I added those pieces to my card panel, I did use the Concord and Ninth Stitch Polka Dot die. It's an older one that I like a lot. Just adds some fun detail to the background. And that cardstock panel is Simon Says Stamp Fog cardstock, which is a super light gray and a fun alternative to plain white. Now it's time to add the beads. I'm going to show you several ways to add beads, these little die cut beads, throughout this video. This is probably not the easiest, but one way. I'll show you an easier one a little bit later if you want to get the placement just right. In this case, I wanted the bottom bracelet to have all the beads kind of towards the right. Now I did die cut plain white circles and glued them behind the stamped letter circles, so there's a little dimension to them, but you definitely do not need to do that if you don't want to. So I did glue those circle die cuts together for dimension before I add them to the card. Again, I'll show you an easier way to do that later. But I put liquid adhesive right along that black string die cut, and then I place the die cuts on top, the little die cut beads on top. And this is a great way to line them up, and I just make sure they're close together. Really doesn't take a whole lot of time, and I'm able to personalize my card with the message that I know the recipient will like. Now I'll start on the other side and do the other part of the message. So this one's going to be kind of set off to the left. And by the way, I used the string die cut that has this kind of wave to it. There's a straight one in the die set too that I'll use later. One thing I want to try, and I haven't tried yet, is to glue these little letters onto some real string like you would make a real friendship bracelet on, and that would add to that handmade feel even more. All right, so after I've added my letters, we have our completed card. You can see how I have added a little bit of texture to the background by using that polka dot background die first. And then we have our letters added on the little strings to make friendship bracelets. I did put little silver gemstones at the end of my beads there just for a little bit of sparkle. And you could do that. You could also use little gems as beads instead of little paper die cuts. But the fun thing about paper die cuts is you can use your cardstock scraps and put them to good use to make lots of beads. So my first idea for personalizing a card is to create a sentiment that is just right for the recipient. All right, now it's time to move on to my next example. This one's for Lila. I just wanted to make something colorful and remind you that you can add somebody's name to a card to make it even more special. And you don't always have to go with a traditional card size. All right, let's start by creating the friendship bracelets on the top and the bottom of the card here. Now there is this die that creates strips that's included in the die set, and I'm going to cut that from white cardstock that I've already put that double-sided adhesive on the back of. Now you don't have to do this, but I like having this double-sided adhesive on here so I can easily add all of the little die cuts and not have to worry about adding glue each time. So basically, I turn this into a sticker and the adhesive is facing up towards the camera. Now I can add all of these little die cuts. You can see I did a lot of die cutting off screen. Thankfully, this die set cuts multiple shapes at once, so you don't have to do each one individually. I went through my scraps and found some rainbow colors, and I die cut those. Again, this is a great way to use up those little scraps. So anytime you see a die set with smaller dies, remember, those are great for those tiny little scraps that we tend to hoard. So all I'm doing here is gluing those little V's right up against each other onto that white strip that has adhesive. And before you know it, we have this friendship bracelet. And I am telling you, these look exactly like the ones I used to make and sell when I was a kid. I loved making friendship bracelets. And this one took a lot less time and it'll mail very nicely. Then there is the smaller strip that same die set makes, and this one you put the little diagonal pieces on, and this creates a different style of friendship bracelet and one that's a little more narrow. So I'll create this one using the same rainbow colors as the first one. When I finished that, I stamped a sentiment from the same stamp set. And it says, "You are such an incredible human." I love that sentiment. And I am stamping it on a little diagonal onto a card that I'm going to cut down to be 4 1/4 by 4 1/4. So this will be a little small square note card, but that will allow me to be able to hang my friendship bracelets off the edge on the right, and it'll still fit in the envelope. Now there are these little spidery looking things that you glue to the end of your friendship bracelets to look like the little knots, and I'm going to have those sticking out the side. It's really easy to do. All you do is glue one end of the spider onto the back of your friendship bracelet and then do another one of those, just lining up the knots there at the center. This gives such a realistic look in the end. Now I can add my friendship bracelets to the card. That light blue piece of cardstock is 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches, and I'm just holding it there as a guide to make sure my bracelets don't stick farther past that on the right, because I want this to be able to fit into an A2 envelope. Now above the sentiment, I'll create a bracelet that says Lila, because that's who this is going to. Such a fun way to personalize the card, and then I'll add the other friendship bracelet above that. I will trim the excess that hangs off the left, but leave that hanging off the right, and this will still fit into our envelope. This is something that I think is really fun, having elements hang off the card. So just make your card a little bit smaller so it'll still fit in the envelope, or you could switch to a bigger envelope size. So with this card, I personalized it in 3 ways. First, I put her name on it. Second, I chose a sentiment that is just perfect for her. I saw that and she's the first person I thought of. And third, I chose colors that I know she'll like. When she does crafting, she always goes for this rainbow color palette, so I chose to use that on the card. So think about colors that the recipient might like as you create their cards. And because I really liked this set so much, I decided to make a larger card for Lila using her 2 favorite color palettes, which are purples and pools. And I came up with a personalized sentiment that I know she'll like. I promise this is the last one of the friendship bracelet cards, but on this one, I'll show you a trick for getting those beads added centered and easily. So I did some friendship bracelet assembly here, just like I showed you before. I did go and find the colors that really were ideal for Lila. She loves rainbows, but as far as particular colors that she likes, lilac colors and pools are her favorite, so I thought I'd mix them together on the card. By the way, I think it'd be fun to do a background of these little V's. It would give a different look than friendship bracelets. It would just create this background full of color and texture. But we'll do that in another video. For now, let's do our sentiments. Now, one really easy way to get little die cuts lined up and centered on a card is to use a sticky mat. This is the stick and stamp mat from Brutus Monroe. It is excellent for things like this. I'm using that line on the sticky mat to line up little circle die cuts. I also have a pickup stick tool that has a wax tip that allows me to pick up the die cuts and place them where I want. And I'm lining up as many circles as I need letters on the top. So on the top, I'll do Lila with a heart on each end. So I need 6 circles total, and I'm just lining up 6 plain white circles here. Now I do dimension behind my beads. If you don't want to do that, just use the stamp circles here. Next, I'll add the beads that I want to go to the left and the right of those little letter die cuts. And so I'm basically lining up all my beads how I want them to be on the card, but I'm doing it on a sticky mat. Now at this point, I decided I needed to set that aside because I forgot to start my card first before I add those beads. So I have a piece of white cardstock here that is about 4.5 inches wide and 7 inches tall. This will go onto a folded piece of black cardstock that I'll cut down to 5 by 7. So this is a 5 by 7 card, which is a really fun size to play with. I'm starting by adding a friendship bracelet at the top of my card and at the bottom. This time I'm using foam tape for added dimension. Now I can fill in bracelets in between. Now I have one thin black die cut here that has adhesive on the back of it already. I'm using a T-roller to make sure that I place it down straight. Now my head's going to get in the way here, I'm sorry about that, but what I'll do is I'll place that thin die cut right along the top edge of the T-roller. So I'll kind of push it right up against it and use my fingernail to press it down. Then I can remove the T-roller and really press it down with a bone folder. But now let's add the letters to that string. So I've got my sticky mat here with my letters lined up. I'll take some temporary tape and place it right on top of the letters, trying not to really press it onto the sticky mat, but only onto those die cuts. I'll pick all those die cuts up together and put liquid adhesive on the back of each. By the way, that yellow tape is from Spellbinders. I really like it for this technique because it has just the right amount of tack, but you could use any temporary tape or washi tape you may have. This technique works great with other small die cuts, not just the ones I'm using today. Now I can pick up that tape, I can see through the tape and make sure I get those centered across that black string die cut, and then I leave the tape on there while it dries. Now I can add some more friendship bracelets around it. Once it's dry, I can remove that tape and then add on the stamped letter die cuts right on top of the plain circle die cuts. So we'll get lots of dimension that way. So I repeated that process for the other friendship bracelets. And so we now have this very personalized card. So we have the personalized colors, we have the personalized by the name, and then again, personalized by the sentiment I chose. I didn't have that sentiment in my craft stash. So these little letters are a great way to create your own sentiment. Now, there are lots of little alphabet and letter stamp sets out there, even die sets. So keep in mind, those are good things to invest in because you can create exactly the sentiment you want. Okay, let's move on to a different type of card. This one has a fun bouquet with a wrap that opens up. I chose a sentiment right for the recipient, and I personalized it using the friendship beads from before. Now, this is the new Concord and 9th paper bouquet die set and stamp set. They are sold together or separately, and I'll tell you, this die set is brilliant. Now, there allows you to make different style flowers, so you can make different style bouquets. But you'll see that the stem dies in this are great. There is also a funny looking half circle kind of die there that allows you to make a wrap for your bouquet, which you could use or skip. Now look at these stem dies. See how there's these little rectangles there along the bottom of it? That shows you how to line them up, how to glue them together to create a nice full bouquet. Not only does it make it easy because you don't have to fuss around with how to arrange these to create a nice bouquet, but it gives you somewhere easy to glue those die cuts together. Sometimes it's a little tricky when you have thin stems like that, and these little rectangles make it so easy. I don't know about you, but when I see products like this, when companies come out with products like this that just make it easier to use and give better results, I get really excited. These are things that I like and enjoy, and so you can tell I'm a little bit giddy about it. It's one of the reasons I'll never have my product line of my own, because I really enjoy and appreciate when companies come out with these great ideas, and I love being able to use them. All right, now here's the little wrap, and you can see how it'll wrap around a bouquet, and then you can kind of tuck the end in so the recipient can open it up on their own. You could tuck other things into this also. You could use other flower die cuts you may have. You could even turn this into like an ice cream cone that opens up. That would be fun too. You could use a hand die. I know that Concord and Ninth has some hand dies too to hold that bouquet wrapper. Lots of things you can do with it, but I'm going pretty basic today, following their arrangement guide. Now, you'll notice on some of the stem dies, there are also little circles at the top of the stems, right where I'm putting glue right now. Those make it easy to tell you where good places are to add small die cuts. So you, again, don't have to figure out the arrangement on your own. There's a good suggestion in the dies themselves. Now, you could change it up if you wanted to, but I'm kind of following along with it. Now, over that little rectangle on the stems, there is a die that creates this kind of wrap, and then a die that creates a little bow. And I'm gluing those on there so it looks like it's wrapped up in a bow. Now, you could do different flowers on here. You can see in the die set there's some daisies and some other things, but I chose the little flower clusters that you see on the left, and I cut those from 3 shades of cardstock. I believe these are Concord and Ninth Nectar, Grapefruit, and Sorbet cardstocks. I love those peaches. And then you can see I already have my little yellow flowers glued on there too. Now for a background, I'm using the Concord and Ninth Sunburst card front die. This is a new one. I like that it doesn't have an outside edge that cuts, so you could cut this directly on the front of your card to add that fun detail. I just cut it from the center of a panel, and I'm trimming it down a little bit so I can add it to a note card later on. I like this detail and how it kind of draws your eye into the center focal point of the card. I then am gluing my wrap onto the bottom of that card panel, and then the bouquet on the inside, making sure that it'll open and close just fine. And then I'll stamp a sentiment onto the inside of the wrap, so when the person opens it up, they'll see the sentiment. You might want to do this before arranging it, but I didn't think of it, so I'm adding it now. Now, I want this to kind of stay closed as I add my little letters, my personalized letters to the front. So I use a magnetic work surface. It's a glass magnetic work surface, and there are these magnets that you can use along with it. So that magnet is just holding that closed as I add my letters. By the way, I have a discount code that will save you a lot of money on the magnetic glasswork surface if you're interested. This is the one I've been using for quite a while now in all of my card making, and I'm very happy with it. So on to this, I need to add the name Tina. So I'm starting with 2 that will be in the center. These are just the die cut circles from that friendship bracelet die set that I showed you earlier. And then I'll put 1 on each side. Since I have 4 letters that'll be going on here, this was the easiest way to position it. And again, I'm using liquid glue here so that I can wiggle them until I'm happy with where they are. I could use the trick with the sticky mat, but since I'm only putting 4 down, I thought this would be faster. So I did solid circles first, and then I'll put another solid circle on each of those because I want to build up that dimension. And then finally, I will add the letter die cuts on top of it to spell out the word Tina. So even though these little letters are supposed to be little letter beads for those friendship bracelets, I found that they can work on a variety of cards, and you'll see more examples later in this video. And finally, I can add those bigger floral die cuts to the inside, just making sure that I'll still be able to close the wrap around them. I did finish it off by adding some little gemstones to the center of those flowers. Those little gemstones are from Trinity Stamps. They're moonstone, and they're my current favorites. Now you can see how that little tuck feature of that semicircle holds the flap closed until the recipient wants to open it. And then you have the sentiment on the inside, and you can see the full bouquet. You could stamp some more sentiments on that wrap, but I thought the single one on the inside would be perfect. Now, if you don't have little letter stamps or little letter dies to personalize, you can also use your computer to print something off onto cardstock and then cut those out, or just cut like a little strip with that name. So do remember, you can personalize using a computer and printer if you don't have stamps or dies to do so. Again, at the end of this video, I will link to another video with more personalization ideas, and that may be helpful to you. Okay, let's move on to a fun shaker window card. I actually have two shaker windows using a great new set from Concord and Ninth. This is the Everything About You. It's another one of those that's so well thought out. So there's the die set and the stamp set, again sold separately or together. And I have two cards that have a different feel to them, but both allow you to come up with just the sentiment you want. All right, now let's start cutting some layers. I'm going to do extra layers so that it's deep enough for a shaker window, but this definitely does not have to be a shaker card. I'll use the outline along with one of the U layers. Each of those U layers that you see over there are a little bit different. They have different leaves on the inside so that when you layer them up, you get a really cool look. So I cut this particular one, the outline and the inside, together twice from Concord and Ninth Rainforest cardstock, and I'm gluing those together. Then I will take another one of those U inside pieces, the layering pieces, put it inside of the outline, and die cut that twice from lemongrass cardstock. So this has, again, this will end up having a different look, which you'll see in a moment. Now you could just do 3 layers using the 3 different U dies and get a really cool look where the inside of those letters have this layered foliage, but I'm going for that heavy, thick wall so we can do shaker. So I glued 2 of the green together, and now I'll glue that on top of my rainforest. So now this is 4 die cuts thick, and you can see how the leaves are building up in the center. Then I'll do one of this is juniper color, where I have the outline along with the 3rd U die. This will go on the top of our shaker window. Then I will use just the outline of the U and cut that from nectar. This will form the back of our shaker window. And I'll use that outline U again and just cut that from acetate. And that will be the window on the front of our U. So I'm creating a U-shape shaker window. So I'll glue the top U die cut layer on top of the acetate. So now we have our window that will go on top of our shaker window. We can add our nectar solid die cut to the back of the walls of our shaker. So now you have that nectar color showing through, and now you can see those leaves better. Isn't that cool looking? Now we can fill in our shaker window. I'm using some older kind of chunky confetti iridescent glitter here. And then I'll also use tiny crystals from Honeybee. These are my favorite to use in any kind of shaker window because they're tiny, they offer a lot of sparkle, and they move around wonderfully. So I filled those walls in as best as I could. There's not much room in there, but enough to see some shaking movement when the card is complete. We'll put the front onto it. This has the acetate on it, and then put something heavy on it while it dries. So now I have this fun shaker element. It's just something fun and different, and it's the focal point of your card, so the rest is pretty easy. So I have a piece of light blue cardstock that I trimmed to 4 by 5 1/4, and I'm adding it onto a white note card that is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches. Now I'll place the U shaker window onto our card, and notice it hangs off the left and the right. That's okay. I'll put this in an A6 envelope, which is a bit bigger, so there'll be room for that. I'll link to my sources for envelopes in the description below. Now I will place a sentiment from the coordinating stamp set right underneath it, and I'll stamp that with black ink. I did add some die cut flowers using that same die set and glued it onto the U shaker window. And I added a few extra leaves too. I used the letter stamps and die to create white heat embossed letters that I can add onto my card. So I did white heat embossing on juniper cardstock. Then I used that circle die there to cut out those letters, and I was able to create the letters for Kathy. Yes, this is going to Kathy Zilski, and I'm gluing those right onto the U. So this is adding a personalized element to the card, right? We have the person's name, but it's not really the focal point. It's kind of subtle because it's on top of everything else. And I think it's just a fun but classy way to really personalize and make a card extra special. When the person gets this, they'll know they were definitely on my mind when I made it. So this again shows you that even though the first stamp and die set I used at the beginning of this video was for friendship bracelets, you can use it for a completely different card style. If you look closely, you can see that shaker movement with those little gemstones inside of the window. You could do less bulk and save some time by just doing the 3 layers alone and skipping the shaker bit, but I tell you, it's a fun way to make the card extra special. Now, I like that so much, I decided to make a second card, changing up the design a little bit and personalizing it in a different way. So I'm using the same products as before to create the focal point of my card. I'm using the same colors as last time because I was happy with the result. I have juniper cardstock on the right, and that is cut to 4 by 5 1/4. I then have 2 pieces of rainforest and 2 pieces of lemongrass. Those are cut smaller. Those are 3 3/4 inches by 5 inches. So those will easily go behind the bigger juniper piece on the right. Now I'm die cutting the U layers right from the center of each of these. So I do 2 of the lemongrass the same and 2 of the rainforest the same, and I'll glue all of these layers together. So this time we're again building shaker window walls. So this can be a shaker card, but I didn't use the outline of the U. So this will be the entire card front. So now we can glue our 2 lemongrass and our 2 rainforest together, layer those up, and you get all of that foliage kind of filling in those U letters. Now on the back of the bigger juniper piece, I'm putting some adhesive. I'm using tape runner here just because it's faster. Putting acetate on that, so that'll be the front of our shaker window. And then on the back of the walls of our shaker, I'll put adhesive and put a piece of white cardstock. So this time I'll have white showing through the shaker window. Off screen, I white heat embossed a sentiment underneath the U that'll be on the front. I should have done that before, but I completely forgot. Now into our shaker well, we can fill it with whatever bits we want. I'm using the same stuff I used before. I'll put adhesive around our little openings here and then place our shaker window on the front of it. I did go back and add a few little flowers and leaves from the same die set directly onto the front of the shaker windows. But I'm also personalizing this with the Concord and Ninth We Are Family die set. Now I'll give you a closer look at this die set in a moment, but in it has all the different family names you could possibly want, and I chose Mom, so I can give this to my mom. I just die cut that from white, and I kind of put it up there at the top left of our shaker window, so it's really incorporated into the message. Now here's a closer look. You can see I again use the Trinity Stamps Moonstone gemstones at the center of each of the flowers. And again, those little flowers and leaf die cuts are from the same die set, but you can mix in any other dies that you may have to get more use from them also. Okay, now we're going to change gears completely, and I think this is my favorite of the cards. I had so much fun making it. Now, Kathy Zilski calls me the goat, but my son calls himself the goat. So it's this big joke in our family about how we're the 2 goats. So I decided to make this card for him as he leaves for his last college visit before he makes his final decision. So I personalized this with the goat and his name and some colors that have meaning to him. Now, here are some other new products from Concord and Ninth right now. There's a few things here, and they all work really well together or separately. First up in the middle, I'm not using on this card, but I used on the last one, is that We Are Family die set. I wanted to go through what's in it. There's friend, human, niece, dad, mom, sisters, aunt, uncle, brother, grandma, cousin, nephew, and grandpa, and there's an and sign. There are also banner dies on the bottom that coordinate with the stamp set. So you can do like You're My Favorite Grandpa or You're the Best Nephew. So many ways you can mix these up to really personalize any card, really no matter the style. Then there are the other 2 products there on the left and the right. These I think are fantastic, and I'm going to be using them a lot. Great for graduation cards, birthday cards, any kind of celebration. And it's called World Best. On the left, you have the die sets to make that big trophy. And on the right are sentiments that you can add to it. Now I'm changing it up and not using a lot of that stamp set on the right because I'm personalizing it. However, I do encourage you to go below and click on this product because Concord and Ninth has some amazing samples, some that are pretty and more elegant, some that are a little more birthday feel. It's so many different things because you can fill that trophy with whatever you want. You could put flowers, stars, anything. I'm going for stars. Now, I also chose to use some older dies from Concord and Ninth. This is the All Together alphabet dies. They're sold separately or together. You've got the lowercase and the uppercase. And I like that it cuts multiples of each letter, so it makes it faster to put a card together. And those are the dies that I used for the words the goat. Once again, I have my stick and stamp mat here, and I'm placing my goat letters that I cut from white cardstock onto it to line them up and get them positioned just right. This is actually 2 layers of white cardstock because I want these letters to stand out nicely. And I will put black cardstock on top of them in a bit. I just wasn't sure what color I wanted on the top at this moment. Once I have the letters assembled how I want them, I'll put the tape on top, flip it over, put the glue on the back, and then pick it up and place it onto my card. And I did the same thing for the above that. By the way, I created my little trophy there using gold cardstock, and the background is Lawn Fawn Blue Jay cardstock, and I used that Sunburst die that I used on the flower card earlier. So it kind of creates like a kind of firework look coming out from the trophy. Now I did that same trick to line up 5 little white circles so I can add the colon words or letters on top of it. Here you can see I'm just starting with the basics, and then I'll add whatever final die cuts I want on top. Really, again, at this point, wasn't sure what color I wanted to do. Then I have a bunch of stars that I cut from yellow and green cardstock using an older Altenew star die set. And I'm tucking those so they look like they're coming out the top and then kind of around the bottom. So you could fill this with flowers, maybe even cut the handle thingies off the side and get a completely different look. It would kind of look like an urn full of flowers or a planter full of flowers. Really useful. I also think this would be great for teacher cards, so you can use little letters to personalize it. You could also use this for graduation. In fact, I think this is the design that I plan to use for my son's friends' graduation cards this year. I'm going to tuck money in the top that they can pull out, and then I'll put 2004 along the center of it. So many ways you could change this up, and I will be sure to share that card design with you in a video very soon. You can see I did white heat emboss Simply the Best and put that right along the bottom. I did black die cuts for the goat and then black stamped letters on the white circles for Colin. This one was a lot of fun to make, and I'm really excited to hear what he says when he will argue with me again that he's in fact the goat, not me. So there you have it, some fun ways to personalize cards to really keep the recipient in mind as you create the card, which will make the experience of them opening it even better. Now, I've promised at the end here I would link to another personalized card video. This one, I used my computer to help me come up with personalized messages. So many things that you can do with this idea. I thank you for watching. I link below to everything I used today, everything I talk about. I do hope that you'll give this a thumbs up so YouTube knows you want to see more videos like this, and you'll subscribe if you haven't done so already. I appreciate it, and I hope you have a wonderful day.